Hello, hello, and welcome back. All right, we have a jam-packed schedule of amazing speakers, and next up is Nick Schiner with Digital Promise. So, welcome, Nick. Thank you so much for being here. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm curious, definitely, to hear about how you got into games and your favorite games because I see Catan
Okay.
behind you. There's
Yeah.
Iron Man. There's
Uh-huh.
so much going
I'm
on
I'm
behind you that I'm
trying to
super
I'm trying to
excited.
hide pandemic. That is there. I'm sorry. I probably should have taken that one out of there. My name is Nick Schiner. I'm the project director for Maker Learning at Digital Promise. Uh, the best way to describe that in terms of gaming is content creation. Making has a really broad definition. It can be anything from prototyping with cardboard to working with really high-tech equipment like the equipment you see I'm using right now, or laser cutters or CNC routers. But we also do quite a bit around just strictly content creation, like audio-visual work. One of the projects that we have with our organization is called My World 360, which is a 360 filmmaking course that you can do and actually submit your videos and have them sent to the UN General Assembly, which is a really cool way. And we've actually sent students and teachers to the UN General Assembly, I believe in Germany and in New York City as well.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
So, how did you get into that space?
So I started my career. Well, I'll start with college. I was a journalism major. I either wanted to be in broadcast or a written journalism worker, a journalist. There, that's the word, a journalist. That's why I didn't do it. I changed my major my senior year to education because I really wasn't feeling a passion for it at that point in my life. I liked working with kids. Side note, I would never recommend just going into education just if you like kids. You should like teaching and learning as well. So I changed my major, finished school, and immediately started teaching elementary school. I taught fourth and fifth grade, and I also taught the technology integration special in Baltimore County here in Maryland. Um, I was a huge proponent and continue to be a huge proponent of using technology in the classroom, and not just digital worksheets or um, games that just drill you on facts like your multiplication tables. I'm a firm believer that the technology we use should be groundbreaking in education. We should be using it to create. We should be using it to change the world. We should be using it in ways that are really powerful. So I did that, and then I moved into central office for Baltimore County Public Schools, where I was leading the Maker Learning initiative for the entire district. So I was responsible for making sure that every school in the school district, which is 25th largest in the nation, my job was to make sure each of them had a Maker Learning presence in their school. So we created a library of equipment that schools could borrow and bring to their school, no charge. They would have curriculum and supports and actual coaching from our team, where we would go out and we would help them with robotics equipment or 3D printing pens. And we support them and we would help them integrate it within their curriculum so that they could meet the standards that they needed to meet. We also took an old school bus and completely gutted it and turned it into a mobile maker space. So we added high speed internet to it, filled it with like Chrome long desktops or tabletops that had computers mounted on them. We had a CNC router, a 3D printer, robotics equipment, drones, and we would take them to the elementary schools around the school system. And elementary school kids would get an opportunity to try each of those things out and learn a little bit more, and also learn about like career prospects. And we had a dedicated teacher who was also the bus driver who would operate that entire operation by herself. It was amazing. And then through my work with the county, I was introduced to Digital Promise, and I've moved over there, and I've been doing similar work to what I was doing with the school system, but nationally through Digital Promise.
That sounds amazing. I like the mobile bus, but I mean, all the programs are important too, because I think a really big part of you know encouraging folks to go into different industries is inspiration and just showing them what's available. Because I actually, for example, did not grow up playing video games because I didn't really know anybody who did, and girls weren't encouraged to do any kind of that stuff. So I only really learned about video games in law school. So way later in my life. So showing folks, in elementary school that, hey, there's so many options here, whether it's about gaming or it's just about computer science or design. There's just robotics, right?
Mhm.
It's showing them that there are so many avenues that they can explore. I think is really important, because then you're giving them options that they can look into and see if that's something that they like.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things, the main work that we do around making or maker learning is that advocacy piece and helping people to better understand why it's so important to have those opportunities early on. I was
Mhm.
listening to Johnny share about people learning about all the different things that they can do within gaming and trying to figure out what they want to do within gaming, and that digging deeper, that saying, okay, I like gaming and I like esports, but very few people go on to be professional athletes,
Mhm.
right? Even people who get full ride scholarships to college, let's say they're playing football, not a lot of them, a very small percentage of them are actually ones who are drafted to the NFL or even picked up afterwards and signed as an undrafted player. The vast majority of those collegiate players that were good enough to play in D1 schools don't go on to do that professionally. They may go on to coach, they may go on to do something that was in a related field, but they don't go on to play. And it's similar in esports. And we have an opportunity with how it's growing now to make sure that we're helping to create those pathways for kids, because we're going to have kids who are, we already have them, who are getting scholarships to go to school to play esports for their school team, or they're just, or maybe they're gaining acceptance, maybe not, and maybe it's not scholarships. So there's multiple things that need to be addressed with that. The first thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that there's equitable opportunities for access to that, right? We know that the top tier esports teams use high powered computing, they have technology, they have the coaches, they have the infrastructure to ensure that their players have everything they need to compete at the highest levels. If we aren't providing that through schooling, we know that there are kids who are going to be left out of that.
Mhm.
We know particularly Black and brown learners and learners of low socioeconomic status who may not have access to high-end PCs at home or high-speed internet. If they don't have that, they're already behind if they want to go into a field like that. So providing those opportunities is a really, really big thing that we need to make sure that we're taking care of. And the other part of it is that we need to be continuing the education, similar to what Johnny said, about helping people figure out what it is that they want to do. I changed my major my senior year of college. That wasn't a great idea. I probably shouldn't have done that. It's an expensive mistake to make. Um, I just finished paying it off, that mistake. Um, the helping people, the earlier they can help, the earlier we can help people figure out exactly what it is they want to be doing, we can help put them on. I don't like to call them pipelines. I actually like to call them on ramps and off ramps, because a pipeline to me signals that it's feeding you right into that thing. And similar to Johnny's example from before, you need time to figure that out. You need time to say, like, you know what, I'm really into the graphic design piece of this. Like, I like creating emotes for Twitch streamers. I like creating stinger transitions. I like all of that work. But I also like shoutcasting, like I shoutcast for my Rocket League team at school, and that's a lot of fun. So right there's two different career paths you could go down in and around esports. So providing those practice opportunities and linking educators and students up with people who are doing that work in and around esports will really help make sure that kids can make really informed decisions as they're moving closer towards whether they're going to a vocational school, entering the workforce right away, or college or university.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree, because, like you said, Johnny was saying, hey, make sure you hone in on what you like. And if you're a creative individual and you can just sort of think up things that you like and be like, well, I really like unicorns and I really like, you can sort of put it together and see if there's a career there. But for a lot of folks, it's helpful to see examples of jobs and career paths and options that are out there. So that's why I absolutely agree with you that it's so important that you create these labs where kids just can come in and be like, I can do this with technology, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. I can see so many options, and I can essentially, it helps me, like you said, to drill down to what I like.
Yeah.
um, but tell me a little bit about digital promise, because you said that one of the important things to work on is access, and that's something that digital promise definitely works on. So besides the makerspace, what are some of the other things that digital promise helps with?
Absolutely. So Digital Promise was actually born out of Congress during, I believe, the last year of the Bush administration. So it was founded through government, and then it was funded during the Obama administration. We are now our own independent nonprofit organization. We are actually called Digital Promise Global. We do business as Digital Promise. Our mission statement is all around closing the digital divide for learners. So when you initially hear that, typically what you think of is you think of broadband access and you think of access to technology, right? You think of having computers in schools,
Mhm.
having robust internet access so that kids can look things up that they need to, create the things that they need to. Digital Promise takes a really broad approach to that. The digital divide is actually way more nuanced and complicated than that simple mission statement that we have, because ultimately we need to be able to quickly communicate that. I talked a little bit about it already, right? Through our maker learning work, like providing access to the tools and technologies where kids can actually create. And some of that work is actually working with providers like HP and Microsoft and other organizations to get equipment into buildings. And some of that is how do we get creative as educators working with what we have to do design oriented work where kids can be creative. So we do a lot with cardboard and we do a lot with LEDs and coin batteries and low cost materials, because the design process is the same no matter what. You need to identify a problem and you need to work towards prototyping and then launching a solution. So we can do that with any type of material, but our goal is to help advocate for schools to have the technology so that they can really do amazing things. Like we've seen students who are 3D printing prosthetic arms or those who are missing limbs. We've seen just locally in Baltimore County a few years ago, one of the schools modified a wheelchair for a student who I believe had cerebral palsy. We've seen that. And like then you see the work that also happens in gaming, right? Like solving a design issue like those who have physical mobility issues, and how do you play with the standard Xbox controller? We see the work that Microsoft has done around that with the adaptive controller. That's a bunch of people noodling around figuring out answers to a problem. That's a bunch of designers and engineers working alongside those who actually will use the product to ensure that what they're designing is going to meet their needs. And that's why it's such a customizable piece of technology. You see this huge centralized adaptive controller, but you can add all these modified adapters to it to use it in all these different ways. And we see streamers now, like Accessible Gamer, who I believe is paraplegic and streams and games on Twitch, which is incredible to me. And those are the things that we should be doing. We should be working on equity of access for, as we started today, for women in gaming, for anyone who's not sure what they want to be doing. Anybody who has had an access issue, that's where education can step in and help provide those opportunities.
Absolutely, absolutely. And already like gaming and esports has the potential to be a much more inclusive industry than any other industry, because a lot of it doesn't rely on your physical characteristics, right? It doesn't rely on your height, on your strength, or even, whether you can use your arms, things like that. So
Like,
it already has the potential to be way more equitable. We just need to go in and make it more equitable,
yep.
whether it's access, like you said, financial access, or,
Mm-hmm.
or access with technology, and having the right equipment. That definitely makes sense. So for anybody who is interested to do the kind of work that you do or help out with Digital Promise, how can people reach out? What are some of the ways that they can join the revolution of making esports more accessible?
So first of all, I'm always available. Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, wherever. You can always connect with me in any of those spaces. Digital Promise has a really robust website that has all of the things that we do. It's one of those websites that like there's so much there that like you can get completely lost in the site. It's actually incredible the number of things we do. We have an entire, I call it our superhero group. It's called the League of Innovative Schools. We have an entire group of the most innovative superintendents from around the country who come together twice a year in person, well, and most recently virtually, and they share best practices with one another. And they tour each other's schools, and they share challenges. They work together to identify ways that they can solve them. We also partner with Verizon in the Verizon Innovative Learning Schools program, where Verizon puts one-to-one technology in schools so that learners have exactly what they need. But we do through all of those programs, whether it's my maker learning work or the burgeoning work in gaming that we have, or any of the other programs, everything we have is online and available for free. So when we develop any resources, they're all accessible on our website, completely open educational resources, Creative Commons. You can modify them, use them however you see fit, which is one of the things I love most. We actually had a teacher take one of our activities called Circuit Arcade, which is cardboard LEDs, coin batteries, and binder clips where you can actually build circuits with those things. He modified it to use tea lights instead of the coin batteries and some of the other pieces. And I believe he sells that now. And I'm thrilled. If I can help an educator put money in their pocket and do good for their students, I consider that a job well done. So we've got a ton of resources that support educators. You can find anything around media literacy, making, computational thinking, computer science, early education, adult learning. We have micro credentials for teachers to take mini courses where they can get credentials and potentially even apply them towards their continuing education credits that they need. We have just a ton of resources. So I would encourage people to check out our website and check out the About Us page where it lists all of the people who work there, and everybody's email address is easily accessible, or you can reach out to me and I'm happy to put you in touch with anybody or anything that you might be interested in.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear that both you and the company are so open and easily accessible so that anybody who feels like they need help or would like to be a part of it can reach out and do that. One
Absolutely.
thing that you notice, you mentioned just now, I think is very interesting, is adult education, because I
Mhm.
think when we talk about gaming and esports or the esports industry, a lot of it is focused on younger folks, right? Folks in high school or college and getting them into those careers. But there's also a lot of older folks who are either looking to shift careers because they're interested in esports. That's definitely, my backstory. But there's also just older folks who maybe don't want to be super, super involved, but they want to be somewhat involved, but they feel like they've been left behind and they just don't really know where to start because like you were talking about the tech literacy part. So can you talk a little bit about um, the adult education piece of access to technology, and specifically what Digital Promise does in that area, but also what other companies can do better in that area, in the adult education area?
Absolutely. So I can speak about that a little bit. My background is mostly in K-12 education, but I think the best example that I can give is my own. You notice that at no point in my story about my upbringing and my high school into college career did I mention gaming as a potential career possibility. And that's because I you know what? I'm a little upset about it, but I'm one of those geriatric millennials that they were talking about the other day. And it didn't feel like a real possibility to me. There wasn't
Mhm.
Twitch, esports. Like, yes, there were gaming competitions, but esports didn't exist like it does now. It was not until really in the last year or two that I even felt like broaching the subject of like working in games was something I could ever do. I've got a
Mhm.
wife and two kids. Like, I make decent money in the education field. It's very hard for me to say, like, yeah, I can make that pivot. But that's something that feels like a possibility. And I already feel like I'm kind of doing it. Like I said, making has a ton of crossover with content creation. We talk a lot about gaming. We've been building a case for being more involved as an organization within esports and gaming more broadly. There's a ton of educational research around it. So I think that my advice to anybody who's an adult thinking about this is, first and foremost, start with what you know you're already good at. As Johnny said before, there's a lot of career paths in this work. There is an entire field around curriculum development for esports. Like, how do you train coaches? How do you train designers and developers? How do you train all of these people who might work in esports? You need training modules for that. How do you do any of this work? How do you become we've seen traditional broadcasters parlay that work into esports and vice versa. We see people move in and out of career paths all the time. And I don't think that that's any different for esports. I think that people can say, these are the things I'm good at. Let's take a look at the cross section of jobs that are available in the esports industry. Are those things that are of interest to me? If they are, great. Let's highlight the things I'm really good at, rewrite my resume and my cover letter, highlight the amazing things I've done that are similar to that, and start looking for opportunities and making connections with folks in that particular part of the field. Um, people like to talk about the gaming industry as a whole, but the gaming industry is actually is an
It's massive.
amalgamation of many different industries.
Hmm.
There's an entire shoutcasting industry. There's an entire player industry. There's an entire organization, like owning an organization industry. There's sponsorships and streamers and influencers and all of these different pathways, the graphic design work, the marketing that Johnny was talking about, advocacy in the nonprofit world, like making sure that there's equitable representation. I know one of the speakers later, Sarah Dactyl, is from Queer Women of Esports. Like that advocacy work needs to happen, and there are jobs that you can have in this field that maybe you never thought you could have. So that's where I would start. And then if there's a place where you feel like you're hitting a wall, well, there are ways around that. How do you, if the jobs that are coming up for you aren't the ones you want, figure out the ones that you want, and then figure out what types of learning pathways would be really helpful to you in moving towards that. Still make those same connections with people and try and share the things that you're really good at. One of the benefits of being a teacher is you kind of have to be a jack of all trades. When I'm in front of 25 to 30 kids every single day, I need to be able to talk like this. I need to be somewhat energetic. I need to know my content. I need to be able to work with technology. I need to be able to handle behavior issues. I need to be able to talk to parents. I need to be able to work with other educators. I need to have such a vast set of skills to do that job on a day-to-day basis. Those skills can be applied in infinite different ways.
Absolutely. I like it. When you talk about it, it's very uplifting because I think for people thinking about a career switch, it can be a little daunting, right?
Sure, absolutely.
But what hearing you talk about it, it sounds like both for older folks switching careers or younger folks going into it, what I'm taking away from what you said is whatever you want to do, it's out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of looking for it and figuring out how to get into it.
Absolutely. And I'd also say that if it's not there, we've seen examples from the previous two speakers, and you'll see others today. Make it yourself. You know, I was plenty risk averse when I was younger, but there are people who are in esports and gaming now that were taking those risks when we were all younger. These geriatric millennials that they talk about now, like the people who are involved and working as CEOs and COOs or really well-known streamers, they were grinding on that stuff before it felt like it was an actual career pathway. They believed in it and they were doing it. And there is risk involved with that. I won't sit here and say that there's not. But now, with the field having exploded like it has, there are so many opportunities that don't have to be as risky for the individual who maybe doesn't want to like completely jump into the water and not really know how deep it is.
That's definitely good advice. I like that there's so much breadth to it, right? You can do what you want and what you feel comfortable with.
Absolutely.
So we just have a few minutes left. If you can talk to us a little bit about the future of education and esports, like are we going to go to school in VR, like in Ready Player One, or like sort of where is it going? What are the exciting opportunities out there? What's next on the horizon?
So if you had to ask me where I see it in the next few years, I think that you're going to see minimal change. I think the pandemic has shown that like virtual school can work for some learners, and for some learners actually work much better. Like there are a ton of studies out there about Black and brown students who during virtual schooling actually achieved better than they were in school and felt safer because the amount of microaggressions that they were dealing with on a day-to-day basis were less than when they were in the building. I'm seeing Baltimore County Public Schools where I am right now. Next year, they're offering a full virtual opportunity. So they're going back to school 5 days a week in school next year, but they are going to offer a full virtual schooling option for
That's
those
incredible.
who are interested in it. So I think you are going to see some of that. I don't know that anytime soon you'll be seeing VR school a bunch, but I think you will see virtual reality in school. You're definitely already starting to see it in job training and job trainings and things like that. So I think that as far as esports goes, you know, there's a lot of competition out there now. There's a lot of different organizations working in that space. Esports in education is going to continue to grow, and it should, because I
Mhm.
talked about those equity of access issues before. We know that gaming is something that engages learners. It gets them hooked on the things that we want them to be hooked on when we want them to be hooked on them, right? If we can teach with gaming, whether it's gamification, where you're taking the content and turning it into a game, or games based learning, where you're actually learning content in a game, or esports. We know that these are things that kids like. We know that when they're happy and engaged in what they're doing, that they're going to be paying more attention and actually doing the work alongside of you as an educator. And I'm so excited for the future of that work and what it's going to look like and the opportunities it's going to create for our kids.
Awesome. That sounds awesome. Yeah, I mean, I understand it. I sort of asked you a tough question because the future is so broad. There's so
Yeah,
much that's going to
absolutely.
happen.
But I mean, that's the way I look at it, and my
Mhm.
hope is that we continue to see these opportunities grow, and I think that we are absolutely going to.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. Well, Nick, thank you so much for being here and
Absolutely.
talking to us about Digital Promise and access in gaming. Go check out Digital Promise if that's something that you're interested in helping out with, or maybe you're a student and you think your school needs more of that. Maybe you can get your school to partner with them and get more of those opportunities into your school. So thank you so much, Nick, for joining us today. We're going to take a quick 15-minute break and then we're going to be back with more speakers.
Thank you so much.